Let's get started. Thanks you all for being here. So a regular meeting of the David Douglas School Board is being held today, Thursday, December 12th, 2024, at 7:12 p.m. in the David Douglas School District Boardroom on 1500 Southeast 130th Avenue, Portland, Oregon, 97233. And then we're going to call our meeting to order with our Native American land acknowledgement. Today, we want to begin our meeting and our meeting by acknowledging that we gather as David Douglas School District on the traditional land of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes, past and present, who made their homes along the Columbia and Willamette rivers, and honoring with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. We further want to again acknowledge the impact of forced removal, violence, and attempted erasure of the lives and legacies of Indigenous people, past and present, and to commit to creating an educational environment that honors Indigenous history and contributions and encourages the continual pursuit of better stewardship of the land we inhabit as well. And also, as per custom, reading the David Douglas mission statement. So our mission at David Douglas is to provide meaningful, equitable, and highly effective instruction so that each student grows and thrives socially, emotionally, and academically. Through supportive communities of learners, David Douglas staff will foster the whole child to be a force of positive change in the global society. So tonight we have a suggestion to edit our agenda. So you will see in our agenda on item 9, which currently stands at the superintendent report, hoping to change that to resolution first read instead. So we wanted to talk ask everyone how we feel about making that addition or change to our agenda. And the resolution is on immigration and protection of students in our schools as relation to that. So, wanted to bring it up to everyone.
I move approval of change of the agenda number 9, I think it's, to do so.
I'll second.
Awesome. It has moved in second, so we can do a roll call vote starting. Oh, discussion. Thank you. Any discussion? All good? Okay, now a roll call vote, starting with Barrow.
Barrow, aye.
Ender, aye.
Saldana Lopez, aye.
Franklin, aye.
Gilmer Justin, aye.
Stevens, aye.
Awesome, it has passed. Thank you very much. So now, agenda item 9 will be that resolution first read. Now on to our scheduled agenda, which starts off with the student body president report.
All right, hi guys, I'm Jacob Hall, obviously, I'm not Melissa. She wasn't able to make it today. She's not feeling sick. She definitely has that thing that's been going around everywhere. But I'm a junior at Douglas, and I'm on the ASB board, and I'm the vice president of athletics. And Melissa has some bullet points she wants me to bring up with you guys. So for school climate, the school has felt calm and relaxed lately, thanks to the recent breaks and the upcoming winter break that everyone is looking forward to. For Student of the Month, we've been recognizing Students of the Month through in-person celebrations and by sharing their achievements on social media to highlight their hard work. For the Holiday Bazaar took place in the North Building and gave clubs like Red Cross and STEM Club a chance to raise money through fundraisers. I believe that was put on through the PTSA. So some holiday-themed activities we've done. We've done a thankful chain, and so students wrote what they were thankful for on paper links, and they were made into chains like this, and we wrapped them around. And they were displayed on the windows of the North Cafeteria for everybody to see. And then Deck the Halls by NHS. So National Honor Society has invited students to create their own paper snowflakes to celebrate the winter season. So tomorrow, NHS members will use the snowflakes to decorate the school halls, spreading festive cheer and showcasing student creativity. And then Night with the Scots. This annual event featured the varsity girls and varsity boys basketball teams playing their first game of the season. This night included fun games and activities to get the crowd excited and celebrate school spirit and the upcoming season. And then Winter Formal. Winter Formal is happening on Saturday, December 14th. The theme is Starry Night, like Van Gogh's painting. and we've been promoting it a lot to encourage students to attend. So club activities, like I mentioned earlier about NHS doing that snowflake thing. Also, HOSA has a mental health promotion, and they've started an Instagram page to share information and tips about mental health for students in our school. And then Presidential Council update. This past Wednesday, the Presidential Council had an important meeting with the district's head of food services. They worked together to create plans for improving school lunches, and that is what this year's main focus topic is. And that is all she has for me.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? Any follow-up? Thank you so much. If you would like to stay for the rest of the meeting, you're invited to do so, but also if you have to go, we understand. Thank you very much. And we're going to go on to public comment. Is there none? Okay, thank you, Lori. There's no public comment tonight. Is there any student comment tonight? I'm not seeing any. Going on to DDA comment. Hi.
Good evening. So things in DDA have been super busy behind the scenes. I think I said that last month, and I'm going to say it again this month. Lots of meetings between Ken and Andy and Florence and myself. Also meetings between Alice and Florence and Sarah to talk about SPED things. Erin, Melissa, Jeanette, and Julie to talk about MECP things. All the implementation pieces of our contract continue to work. I know HR and the business office continue to do tons of work on adjusting payroll, salary schedules, dependent upon experience that wasn't credited before or credits that weren't credited before. It's a huge job on top of their already huge jobs, and so we're super appreciative of that. We know that it's going to take some time to work through some of those, but we'll continue to work together. We also know that they've been working on the insurance pool at this time of the year, so there's just a lot behind the scenes that people don't see or know that's happening, and so I just want to thank all the people who are involved behind the scenes and aren't seen by people necessarily doing all the things, but I do know that the implementation pieces are greatly appreciated as they're rolling out. Last week, I had the opportunity to attend an educator roundtable with other DDA members as well as union members across the East County area. And so we talked with Senator Chris Gorsuch, Representative Ricky Ruiz, and Representative Con Pham about issues in education that are important to us and things that we're looking for them to be doing in Salem as the session opens. And of course, the budget had just come out, the governor's proposed budget, so that was a hot topic of the night. One of the big topics was summer learning, and that has not been wildly successful for people, and we need funding during the school year. So it was interesting. A lot of the folks around the table were saying we need to invest during the school year, and I also was listening and hearing that we have quite a bit of support staff in David Douglas compared to other East County school districts. So thank you for that. We do prioritize that, I know. Starting in January, we will have schools and programs coming to school board meetings to share with you some things that are happening out in the field and how some of the contract implementation is affecting our educators. So we look forward to seeing a few more people in the room again. People took a little bit of a break after bargaining, and so that we're ready to come back and share more things with you, and so we look forward to that in January. So, and I know everyone is looking forward to their break that's coming up next Friday. We're making it through this time of the year. The 3 weeks between the Thanksgiving break and the winter break is always an interesting time in our schools, and this year is no different. It's a challenge. We have a lot of sick staff out, and so covering that, and then just there's excitement and there's stress and there's lots of things going on. So we're just trying to keep everybody going and deliver the quality education that we know that our kids deserve. So we're just all working together to make that happen. So that's all I have for you.
Thank you. We're excited to see more faces next year, starting next year. Next is OSEA comment. Good evening.
I'm Darla Black, and I'm honored to serve as Classified Union President representing the dedicated employees of Chapter 40 in the David Douglas School District. As we face a challenging year marked by budget constraints, I stand here to advocate for the essential and often underappreciated contributions of classified staff. These individuals are the backbone of our schools, ensuring that our students have safe, clean, and welcoming environments to learn and grow. From instructional assistants and custodians to secretaries, food service workers, and bus drivers, classified staff play a vital role in the success of our schools and the lives of our students. This year is especially critical as we prepare for full contract negotiations. It is imperative that we prioritize the needs of our classified employees to remain competitive in wages and benefits. Across the state and nation, we are seeing a workforce crisis in education. Many districts are struggling to attract and retain staff, and David Douglas is no exception. We cannot afford to lose the talent and dedication of the people who make our schools function effectively every day. Classified staff are often the first faces students see in the morning and the last ones they see at the end of the day. They are the ones providing one-on-one support to students who need it most, keeping our facilities running smoothly and ensuring every child has access to the resources they need. Yet despite the critical role, many of these employees struggle to make ends meet. Competitive wages and comprehensive benefits are not just about fairness, they're about ensuring that we continue to provide a high-quality education to every student in our district. Budget cuts are always difficult, and I understand the hard decisions that need to be made. However, I urge the board to consider the long-term impact of underfunding classified positions. When we fail to invest in these roles, we risk increased turnover, lower morale, and ultimately harming the students that we all strive to serve. Retaining skilled and dedicated classified staff is not only an investment in our schools, but an investment in our community's future. As we move forward in this process, I ask the administration and the board to work collaboratively with our union to find solutions that reflect the values of classified staff. Let's prioritize fair wages, affordable health care, and improving work conditions. Together, we can ensure that David Douglas remains the district where employees feel valued and students thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy. Next, on to the appointment of budget committee members, position 1 and 6. So I'll pass it on to Director Franklin and Ender.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. I'll be Ender. So I just wanted to start by saying I was really impressed and happy to see a lot of excitement around the budget committee position. So we had many qualified applicants come in, many viable candidates. I made the decision hard, which is what I want to see for every call out for involvement with the board and the school district. So I just want to encourage anyone who didn't volunteer for this round to keep thinking about themselves and how they can be involved in district activities, and anyone who did and maybe wasn't selected this time, this was a hard decision, and we'd like to see you back again. So thank you for putting your name in. I went ahead and made a tough decision, but was happy to appoint Zion Mayfield. I hope I'm saying the name right. To position 1 budget committee to serve on the budget committee this year. Pass it to you.
Yeah, I'd like to second those thoughts. We had a great number of highly qualified applicants, and I'm very excited to nominate Joy Schumer for position 6 for the budget committee. She works with the county and is well versed in serving the community and working on budgets. And she has a really strong equity lens, and so I'm very excited to have her join our team. And yeah, I would like to just encourage everyone who put in applications and was not selected this round to please stay vested, because we always have the need, and the more people involved in the budget process, the better, more eyes on it, and members that can contribute. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear. You know, sometimes there's certain positions that we really got to recruit for, so I'm really glad to hear that people are interested in the budget committee, and it is like a pivotal time right now, so I'm really glad that folks seem really interested. So hopefully we see their names and again. Going on to consent agenda, this is an action item. Do we have a motion?
I move approval of consent agenda.
Second.
Has moved and seconded. Is there any discussion, comments on this? All right, if none, then starting with Stevens.
Stevens, aye.
Gamira Jerson, I.
Franklin, aye.
Saldaña Lopez, aye.
Ender, aye.
Barrow, aye.
All right, has been passed. Thank you. So now as we talked about earlier, we had edited our agenda to include the resolution first read. And, you know, this is a first read, so it's not an action item yet. Hopefully bringing this forward to January's meeting as well. But yeah, passing it over. Do you want to get us started? Yeah, either of you?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Tay.
I think that it was just very important for us to take another look at this. The last time this draft has been submitted was in 2017. And I think with us facing new administration coming soon after January, we wanted to ensure we uplift the importance and reiterated where we stand as a district with welcoming our families and ensuring that they feel safe at all times. So I don't know that we want to read this at first or how we want to do it.
Yeah, I think it still needs some edits.
It does.
So we will, if we want to officially maybe read it next time.
Okay.
But for folks that, you know, had the chance to look it over, maybe not, do we want to take a moment if there's any edits?
I was going to say, I think that's the main intent tonight, board team, is the reality is to make sure it's in front of you and have conversation about it. Have conversation, because I believe the intention is from board leadership is to bring this for your consideration around an action next board meeting. Mm-hmm. So tonight, the intention was this is a draft. Are there things that you see as changes? So I don't see it reading the whole thing other than if someone hasn't had the chance to look at it. Mm-hmm. And then from there, open up time, open up mic for people to give feedback.
And it's been made available to each one of you virtually, electronically too.
I would like to see called out in number 3, the legislative agenda, advocacy, state and federal levels. I don't see anything around our system of asylum and asylum seekers throughout. And I know asylees are a type of refugee, but I think that's one system that's been under the microscope. And I would love to ensure that our asylee and asylum-seeking families know that they're included in this.
Yeah, I think overall the main idea was just to, sounds so much louder, was just to make that addition and have stronger just statement for our families to make sure that they feel as supported as possible, and to, you know, be very clear with educators, with staff, where we stand and what we expect, so that it's very clear to everybody that we are telling our staff and our teachers, everyone involved, that there is no, there is protecting our students, and that comes first. So I know that there has been a lot of edits, changes in the background, but I think we're still we're still hashing that out. So I don't know if there's anything else.
Yeah, Heather and
Maybe
I
we just
spent
need-
some time together, and then our entire department, the DEI department, also took a look at this. IDA was very pivotal also in this work, so I just want to call that out. There has been some edits and probably a little bit more, so feel free to send those my way. Heather, I, and Gabriella, we can jump on a call again and go through this if you like.
So I just want to add to this, and I want to echo and Tay thanked everyone, but also thanking Tay, her entire DEI team, board leadership, and IDA. So a tremendous thank you to everyone involved in this process. And then I also want to add that the resolution, the amazing power of that and communication to our entire community that we will protect our students and schools are safe space, and we're putting a priority in the ground around that, which we've done before. We're just making it more thorough and revisiting it, right? But I wanted the board to know that we also have had recommendations and conversations about looking at policy, changes in policy, consideration for our community to know. We're also looking at that as a possibility. And then finally, upcoming kind of shoulder-to-shoulder communication with the board. We're talking about the possibility of a video with key players within the community reading pieces of this and other statements to our community. We're talking about there's a draft, something from the superintendent I enjoy and am thankful for the privilege to be able to send something out to reinforce this as well to our entire community. And then part of this, just so you know, is the training, right, to make sure that all of our staff know where we stand, how we show up to protect kids, what that looks like, what the law is, how we implement the law, et cetera. So I just want the board to know we take that seriously as well. You know, it's not just, oh, it's here and publish it. It's something that will be living and implemented as we go into this year and into January.
Yeah, and in working with this and looking at the precedent that I saw set really right away was Chicago Public Schools came out, and a lot of this language is really from them. And one of the things that I thought was really cool about this was, from Chicago side anyway, was that they worked directly with the unions in the district. And so I'm kind of want to put it out there too, that like ideally we could think about some of this language too, in terms of some of this talks about working with partners, but I would like to, you know, name specifically union partners and think about how we could tie us all in together. So as a first read, but maybe in this next bit of time, we can be in touch about how to tie this full circle.
And I think, you know, we've been, you know, in this statement, in the resolution, it states very clearly students and families. I feel like we've been naming students, but I also wanted to make it very clear that we're also talking about families, because we know that schools are gathering places for all of our community. So didn't want to miss that. But yes, I think if during this time, you know, this is a first read again, so we're not doing any action on it. So we invite any conversation, any feedback, and we really want to just, again, strengthen this and revisit it as we've talked about. So,
Knowing that this came quickly, did it get added to the public page, Lori? Not yet? Okay. I just want to make sure that we follow our rules around publishing potential policy. Thanks.
is there any further comment, questions? Sure.
I just want to say I think it's such a huge value add that my kids can go to school in a district that includes such amazing diversity. And also, Tay, I wanted to thank you for the idea of kind of using a megaphone, the district's megaphone, to the videos and having kids read this, and maybe some parents too. I really like the idea of just disseminating it throughout the community as much as possible, so that you have that.
Again, that was IDA too. She was a part of that. So.
Oh, nice.
I'm excited about the possibility of the videos, and I know that Ken is also looking forward to that because he'll be recorded.
Yeah, thank you, Tay. And thank you, Heather and Gabby.
Can we do it in different languages?
Yes.
And I will say also, Corvallis Public Schools also has a lot of resources, at least in Oregon, of how to handle a lot of these situations. I know I have some of this research. I'll share them with you. I think this needs to be a continuing conversation, because the unfortunate part is we can say all these things, but how will we react to our written policies
Yeah.
when they say we will no longer give you federal funding because you say these things? So we have to have this conversation and be prepared for that and how to handle that.
Yeah.
Because I know, I mean, I'm an immigrant. I grew up in a largely undocumented population in Miami, Florida. I was undocumented myself for part of my life. So I know that there's the fears that people say the nice things until the money gets taken away. So we need to have something
Yeah.
to be prepared for that.
And we've been having those conversations, and Jose, you're absolutely right. That is the reality. The other thing, for those who were at the Senator Wyden town hall, you heard from our students and what their priority was and what they are afraid of right now. So we want to make sure that we are also supporting their needs and voice.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, everyone. I know that this is just the beginning of a conversation, and it's really unfortunate to be having this kind of looming over our heads of like what it could be. And I know that a lot of students, a lot of families are thinking about this. So for us to be talking about it right now is really impactful. So I know that there's much more concrete things to do, but the willingness of a district to have these conversations is what makes it so special. So thank you. Any last thoughts? Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Next is data reports. I think Derek. That's you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to give you a short briefing on ninth grade on track, or freshman on track, which is a key metric that we take a look at in understanding the health of our system. It's also one of the significant accountability metrics that the state uses in a number of different ways. So let's go ahead and jump in. This first slide is showing you just historically our ninth grade on track numbers. And to pause for just a moment, ninth grade on track being defined as students who have earned 6 credits by the end of their freshman year. And we would include summer school in that. So you could also say prior to the beginning of their 10th grade year. So this is the percentage of students who have met that particular mark. And you can see, looking historically at it, that we're always trending upward. Got north of 85% back in the 2018-19, so just prior to COVID. 2019-20, the reason that bar is yellow is the state didn't actually collect those data that particular year. So what we've got there is our own internal measurement of what that number would have been had we submitted to the state. You can see in 2020-21, the COVID year, like many districts, a pretty significant impact in terms of percentage of students that were able to meet that mark of 6 credits by the end of their freshman year. And then there's been some slow recovery from that particular period of time. Go ahead, Sandy. This is the same period of time, but then broken down by race and ethnicity. So with all students being the dotted line on the graph there, so you can see again the impact of COVID to everyone, and then just how different student groups have been able to respond and recover since that time. Go ahead, Sandy. And then another breakdown in terms of program enrollment. So here you've got our total student population, SPED population, and then both active and ever English learners. So again, you see the similar, see the dip in the 2020-21 school year, and then what's happened since then. Go ahead. This is a graph showing you how we compare to some of our neighbors. The dotted line is the state number. And so David Douglas is the red line there. And so what's significant here is, pardon me, you can see that when we hit the COVID year, we ended up with I would call it significantly more negative impact. The impact to our students was about twice the state number. You can see we were kind of trending right with the state the year before COVID, and then the hit that we took was almost twice what the state took. And for probably a variety of reasons, our recovery has lagged a bit compared to the state and compared to some of our neighbors nearby. Down in the menu, if you or the legend of this particular graph, the plus or minus number that you see in parentheses is just the rate of change going back. I think the beginning of this one is 2017-18. So the percentage change from that time to now for each district. So you can see David Douglas, we're down about 8 percentage points over this particular period of time, and how others have done over that period of time as well. And then this is just another graph, just a bit more context. These are just a few other neighbors, pardon me, not neighbors, but other districts that are similar to us in size, not necessarily similar in terms of demographic breakdowns, but also not terribly dissimilar, if you will. And we don't often show you this, but we have taken a look at it just to see how others have done as well. And again, you can see a lot of folks being kind of negatively impacted initially, and then how folks have done over the last few years in terms of recovery. And again, ours has lagged a bit. Go ahead, Sandy. Okay, so I mentioned up front that the state defines this as 6 credits, and they don't really care what flavor of credits those are. They can be core, they can be elective, it's just any 6 credits. We know internally that not all credits are the same in terms of their predictive value on graduation. So we try to also take a look at, what specific credits are being earned during that first year. Sandy, go ahead and hit the next one, if you will. There you go. So this line then shows you among the students who have earned 6 credits, this is the percentage of students who received at least 1 math credit as part of the 6 in our district over that period of time. So again, I think this just reinforces how important it is that we're helping students meet their needs in math and earning those credits as early as they can as they're working toward graduation. I know Rochelle's going to give you a math data presentation here shortly as well and say more about all of that. Go ahead, Sandy. So 9th grade on track, again, it's an accountability component. It's also just a really highly reliable predictor of graduation. And this screenshot is just pointing you to ODE's website, where you can find lots of different research projects that they've done. And there is a paper on 9th grade on track that you can find there if you're interested in seeing more about the state and kind of how everybody's doing in this area. If you have any trouble finding that, just send me an email and I'll send it to you directly. Go ahead. So again, here's 9th grade on track, and then I'm going to show you in the next couple slides the same group of students and what their graduation rate looked like. So go ahead and go to the next one. So you can see, looking back to 2011-12 and for those 4 or 5 years leading up to 2015-16, a high level of correlation, almost a 1 in terms of correlation, in terms of the predictive value of 9th grade on track. It's always the 4-year graduation rate's always about 5 to 7% lower than whatever the 9th grade on track number is. And in our district, similar to other districts that I've been associated with, those numbers do not differentiate based on race, ethnicity, or program enrollment. It's just true. If you're on track, you're about 90% graduation rate. If you're not, it's about a coin flip, and it doesn't really matter what different groups you might belong to. So you can see across that period of time, really high predictive value and correlation. Go ahead, Sandy. Things got a little less predictive after that. So in 2016-17, we saw that would be the spring that graduation rate requirements were softened a bit by the state during COVID, and so we saw a spike in the graduation rate. We saw a lot of relief around grades and things like that. And then the next couple of years after that, it dropped significantly and went back up. So it's the graduation rate was, I would call it erratic for a few years following COVID. So looking at that, you would probably say, oh my gosh, well, what happened the next year if if the on-track rate was below 65%? It looks like it would probably be a disaster. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Sandy. And no, it's not. The reason that portion of this bar is in gray is that, so these would be students that graduated last spring, and ODE hasn't released that information publicly yet, so that'll be later on in January. So that's just our estimate right there, right around 70%. And so that would be the first time since we've been tracking ninth grade on track. I think that in our district, the graduation rate was higher than ninth grade on track. We've taken a look at this year's seniors and just looking at the credits they've earned and making some reasonable and probably conservative estimates about the opportunities they still have in front of them to earn credits, and have made a bit of a conjecture about what it might look like this spring. Go ahead and hit the next slide, Sandy. And it's probably going to be right around 70%. That's what we're predicting in terms of this year's seniors and how their spring performance will look. So, and if you believe in that ninth grade on track number, you can see, again, the juniors, sophomores, and kind of on down the line, it looks like we're going to be kind of living in that 70% range for a graduation rate for the next couple of years, based on our ninth grade on track numbers and the historic high reliability of it predicting graduation rate. So I think that's all I've got. Thank you, Sandy. Yeah, I'll pause and see if you have any questions.
Can I ask a fairly dumb clarifying question, at least to me? When you're saying that there's 6 credits down, you mean that they get enrolled into math and science and all that, and then they have D's and F's, which means that they don't get credit for that class at the end of each quarter. And so they have to make up those 6 to 9 credits by graduation in their senior year, and that's what's holding them back from receiving a degree.
Yep. Thank you for that question.
I know it sounds but my kids are in middle school, so I haven't.
It's a really good question, and I should have clarified that up front. We give credit for D's, I believe. I'm going to pause and look. I believe we give credits for D's, right? So you would still be earning that credit. F's you would not. So I think everything that you said is true, and I think it's a little more nuanced than that, and maybe Rochelle or Brooke can speak to it around students coming in from their middle school experience and what classes they end up taking or being placed in. 3 credits of math are required, and there are different ways to do that across your high school experience. If you're taking courses and you're not earning the credit, though, that just means later on you've got to make up those credits somehow, so you start having to use your electives to find opportunities to earn that credit again.
So if one of my kids gets into math, basic math, when they get into ninth grade and they get an F or have to drop out of the class, then they'll have to take it again as an elective.
Correct.
Sophomore, junior,
Correct.
senior.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. And then there's credit, opportunities through summer school and things like that as well. But generally speaking, that's the way that it works. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you think about the bounce back lag that you're seeing compared to both on both the slides, where you're compared to, if we have that trend is pretty significant, that downward trend over those years, and then the lack of bounce back that we're seeing in both similar districts in terms of size and similar district in terms of location and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't get a chance to contact any of those districts to find out what they might attribute, greater response to the COVID experience would be, but it's certainly noticeable to me. Again, I might ask Brooke and Rochelle if they wanted to speak a little bit to the strategies we're using, the resources we're putting in place to try to make up some ground there. I know that through curriculum adoption, we've got new tools in teachers' hands, and that's certainly going to be helping us long term, but those things often take a year or two to be fully implemented, and then for us to really start seeing the results in state tests and things like that. So, Brooke or Rochelle, do you have any comments about, I guess Rochelle stepped out, sorry.
Yeah,
Calling
we
on
can
her. she's
address
not
some
here.
of that in the math report
Okay.
for sure.
Yeah.
I think it aligns very nicely with this.
Yes, I do
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does align really. Oh, sorry. I was just
No.
going to say, I think it aligns really well with the upcoming math middle school to high school transition conversation here too. Because
Yeah.
ninth grade on track seems like the ultimate predictor, but that in and of itself should be
Yeah.
what we're thinking about then, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, we have high school administration in the audience too. If you want to wave your hand or weigh in on any of this, please, well, to say hi, they know who you are. But I was thinking if there's anything you want to add, thank you though. But I wanted to add, so we talked about curriculum, talked about instruction, right? Instructional practice, how important. And the high school is also deep digging into and working with division chairs and all the teachers around grading practices as well, and how grading practices impact the status. So there's a lot of different moving parts and things that they're looking at to develop. I know, again, there'll be a lot more data in the math, but the curriculum's one piece, but the instruction, the grading, the learning, all those things put together. And I know the high school leadership team and staff in general are starting to, and not just starting, but having those conversations and trying to move that work forward as well. Yeah. Anything you'd like to add, Jen or Joe? Or got it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Is there anything last? Thoughts, comments? Not, yeah. Speak now.
Not surprised.
Yeah.
That's what we expected.
Thank you, Derek. Going on to Florence, who's going to be talking about discipline action report and restorative practice implementation update. Thank you, Florence.
Yeah. Just kind of doing a check-in on our discipline data, exclusionary in particular at secondary level. You may recognize this report similar to the year-end one that we covered in September from year-end data. This is just an update, so September, first day of school essentially through the first week in December. You'll get first semester. I think we cover it in February. So this is just, again, you've got, in looking at this, that first row at secondary level, we've got the high school at that first row. The numbers, one thing, it's hard to look at this because you've got 2 years. We've got 22, 23, and then 23, 24. Those are year-end numbers. And then that row that's like starts with that green bar is 3 months worth of data. So it does look very different. So the numbers are smaller intentionally because we're only looking at just a couple of months worth of data. But what is highlighted across all of the levels without focusing so much on the numbers, because you guys can take a look at those, is our disparities in particular. While we're not seeing a big difference yet, it is, that goal is to get that number to 1. So if we're looking at like Fur Ridge to highlight that in particular, we're below 1 right there. And then if we scroll down and look at our middle schools is on page 2. We will see that we are still have work to do there as well. What is not highlighted here, though, is what I want to do is talk about the stories behind these numbers that is not reflected because it's so early in the year. Is it doesn't show the number of students and the reduction that we are seeing in the number of students that are being excluded. In looking at the middle school in particular, because if you remember last year, those numbers were really high with the number of students that we were excluding if we're just not looking at the percentages. In each of these cases, less than 10 students. And that's captured here in like 9%. So 33% of our population, 9%. So that right there is being reduced. Yes, in comparative, looking at white, that disproportion or that disparity is there. We're focusing on reducing the number of days that we're keeping kids out of school, if that makes sense as well. So that is one thing that we're working on, that consistency. So sometimes it was like 3 days automatically for every suspension. We've reduced that down to like 1 day, half a day. And what we're seeing as I look at the number of days that we're excluding students, we've gone from like looking at 3 months worth of days missed of over 100 days total. We're looking at specifically in our middle schools, because that's where a lot of days were missed. In our Black African American population, we've got 20 days, where last year at that same point we were over 100. We're looking at 8 days on white students of missed days of school due to suspensions. At looking at Floyd Light, we've got 20 days and 22, and then at Ron Russell we're looking at around 30 and 28. And all of those days were over 100. So looking at that reduction, and what we've done is looked at consistency, so that's been a win. That also presents challenges in looking at our high school numbers, for example. One thing that the high school has shared as being a challenge is when we're looking at like a 1-day suspension, it doesn't give time to really do the investigations for complex cases. Because the goal is to get students back in school, that sometimes it takes a little bit longer to do that investigation. That extra time when we were looking at like 2 days or 3 day suspensions, it built that time in before bringing students back. So that has been a little bit of a challenge in looking at this data. Some of the positives of the work that has been happening is that it has allowed the secondary team to meet regularly, which they've really enjoyed because it has allowed for consistency amongst the levels. Floyd Light shared that they continue to have success with restorative procedures and that families have been very receptive to streamlined accountability. So they are getting feedback from families that they have really appreciated just the consistency in that streamlined accountability. And the high school has really spent time intentionally as a staff recognizing more students. You heard Jacob talk about some of the things that they are doing. I'm going to read some of the things that the high school has flipped some of that focus. We get what we look for. And Jen has shared some of the things that they have done as part of this work of really looking what we get for, some of those positives. So they do a staff member of the month, where each month a new department is highlighted and the student body fills out a form with the name of their nomination and a short blurb about why they nominated them. The staff member with the most nominations receives a certificate and a free lunch at the Kilt. All staff who receive nominations get the note with the quotes from the students. So a way to kind of flip that. For students, Jacob talked a little bit about these as well, was Student of the Month. So far, they've recognized 67 students for Student of the Month, and they celebrate it by doing a classroom explosion, where a group of students from the Student Council go into classrooms with pom-poms and cheering. And the Student of the Month receives a certificate and a full-size candy bar while the entire class gets a dum-dum. They recognize Athlete of the Month and the Most Valuable Teammate. They've been able to do 12 students this way, and they've celebrated this also by a classroom explosion. They've done Bug Awards, where students receive a certificate and a cute bug. They've done Skittles for Scholars. Student athletes who earned a 3.75 GPA during their season get a certificate and a bag of Skittles. They were able to celebrate 84 students that way. Smarty Pants. Students who earned a 4-point year-to-date get a certificate in Smarties. First grading period, they celebrated 232 students, and second grading period, 196. Spirit and behavior points on 5-star. Students have the opportunity to earn spirit points on 5-star for behavior. doing the right thing, engaging and participation, helping others, and then improvement, whether it's attendance, grades, behavior. And then they can also participate in spirit days, their grades, attendance, extracurriculars, and then they can turn in points for rewards in the store. And so kind of looking at, while focusing on reducing exclusionary discipline, also getting kids to participate and recognizing them more. So while kind of going with that, we get what we look for mentality and getting that student voice. Looking at kind of next steps, we continue to collaborate and work on focusing keeping kids in school and working to support their needs. Repairing and restoring when appropriate. I know one thing that we had talked about throughout the summer, and as we looked at this data, was one of the dispositions in looking at that exclusion was we were referring to restorative conversations. So some of the work that continues into the fall has been, we are only marking that box if we are including the members that were harmed in whatever it was that the behavior occurred in, and not just marking restorative conversation. So defining that for all of our administrators and our staff, and only marking it if those who were harmed were involved in the conversation, otherwise just marking it conversation with student. So in looking at the dispositions, there has also been a decrease in restorative conversations and an increase in conversations, which helps clarify which one of the things that we were looking through our restorative work. Our elementaries are meeting regularly as well. The focus there has been consistent behavior responses, reteaching expectations school-wide. They have a reteach scheduled for the beginning of January when we get back, kind of getting back to some basics. And then a lot of the focus has been around preschool and how do we separate expected preschool 3 to 5 year old behaviors with unexpected behaviors in that type of setting, because those are bubbling quite a bit, and that's where a lot of energy is being spent right now, so teasing those out. And that is where we are at right now with our report. Questions?
Thank you, Florence, for this. Do we have the disparity column for the number of days?
No.
Or the behaviors that we were going to track to? Are we going to do those in January?
January.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. One thing I wanted to, I think it was you that we were talking about this, and I wanted to highlight in terms of comparing the two columns when we were talking about kind of what they mean relative to each other. So in looking at the first yellow column, we're looking at like anybody impacted by being excluded from school. And so that's just like, were you excluded from school, yes or no? And so that disparity would just be first behavior. And then the second column, we're looking at, that's more of where we would see the impact of restorative practices playing out. And so what I think is interesting when I'm looking at these is whether or not there's a difference between those two columns. So if it is going up, if the second column is larger than the first, we would say that the black kids relative to the white kids who have been excluded are being excluded multiple times. And so restorative practice is working less effectively in those settings than schools in which they're more equivalent or there's a reduction. And so for me, that's where I'm seeing this issue of whether the restorative practices that we're implementing are effective in terms of reducing disparities. And if not, if there's an increase on that second column from the first, then we're seeing the opposite, in that we're still bringing down numbers, but we're not bringing down numbers with respect to the racialized aspect of discipline. So that's that's where my eyes go right to when I'm looking at this is, the straight numbers, but also those relative to each other.
Similarly, I think that the board was hoping that these conversations would really be hyper-focused around black, white, reducing discipline data. Like, I love all the work that's being done, you know, in other ways to bring total numbers of exclusions down, because we know kids can't learn if they're not in class. But the disparity number is really what we're hoping to hear in terms of, you know, not only tracking the data, but what specifically has been done to address, let's talk the Black kids in our schools relative to white. And so I don't know if that's just a matter of we're not asking the right questions every time, but I feel like we get these reports a lot, which are about everybody, but the board was very clear that we want to focus on that. So in the future, I would like to see much more around the disparity, much more like what Heather was talking about, so that we do what we're aiming to do, which is to bring that number down to 1. I also want to know, what is Amy doing? Can we bring Amy back? Because Amy's data was off the charts in the opposite direction, and now it's like, and those are difficult, you know, kids to work with sometimes. I mean, they have challenges over at Fur Ridge. So yeah, just a few thoughts around that.
Yeah, I was going to say that one of the things that, in terms of like next steps, what are we working on? I think specifically targeting on the disparity, like how are we addressing that within discipline? Because it, you know, even when you were talking about the number of days missed, like Black students are missing more days than white students comparatively. So then that means that Black students are not getting into education. And if we relate this to the previous presentation that Derek, you were talking about, Black students are not catching up on 9th grade on track as much as other students in our district. So just to say that everything is related, so how are we ensuring that that disparity is addressed and keeping students in schools, especially students that we know are not catching up? And so they're the most affected and the ones that are right now are missing the most amount of school. Is there any more questions, thoughts? Thank you, Florence. And we are going to follow this up with a math update.
Yeah, let's talk about math, shall we? Ask Rochelle to come up. And
thank you.
You know, with these reports, you know, with math especially, we can go a lot of different directions, but we appreciate the opportunity. We met with Heather a few weeks ago just to see where do we want to go with this report, and I think it does it. Everything aligned, because it aligns beautifully. The focus being on middle to high transition and how kids are doing in middle school, and how does that show up their freshman year, and what does that look like for 9th grade on track. So it's great. And I do want to acknowledge we had an opportunity last week to meet with our middle and high school principals, just with a focus on math and talking about what does that look like in David Douglas. And we had such great conversations, and we did ask our principals to come tonight. I want to publicly thank them. I know it's been a really long day, as for Rochelle as well. She met with high school math teachers. She's been meeting with high school math teachers this week. But available so they can hear your questions, they can help answer questions, but as we look at this data. So so thank you guys all for being here. I know it's been a long day, and I'm going to turn it to Rochelle.
Awesome. Yeah. Second kudos to all the admin that are behind me. And they offered if there was specific questions maybe about their schools or things that they're doing in their buildings and with their teachers, they were happy to speak to it. So you're on the hook. Just kidding. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. I have 2 data graphics that I'd like to speak to, and then I'm open to questions. I know that you got a handout as well that had some additional graphs or data analysis that we can definitely dive into, but the first 2 are the ones I'd like to kind of start with. So we had a great conversation really wanting to know about who is being successful in 9th grade math. And we're going to take a special look at Integrated 1 Math. That is our first high school math credit course. There are 3 of them, Integrated 1, 2, and 3. And we're just looking right now at students in our Integrated 1 classes who are 9th graders that also took a middle school math class at Alisat, Floyd Light, or Ron Russell. So we're not looking at any out-of-district 9th graders who might have transferred in. And this is kind of showing us overall, we've got 73% of our current 9th graders enrolled in Integrated 1 are passing as of our progress report number 2, which just turned in right before Thanksgiving. And I should clarify, Derek mentioned this earlier, a D is technically passing, but you'll notice that I did not put that on the blue side. And the reason I did that is because if you talk to any math teacher or any content area teacher, if you earn a D in any course, your likelihood of passing the next course is in jeopardy. And so I like to think about if you're earning an A, B, or C, you're more likely to succeed on any future course. And if you're earning a D or an F, you're kind of in the danger zone, right? Like, so that's why I qualified kind of division there. We've got Alice Ott, Floyd Light, and Ron Russell broken down. And so of the 73% of all of our freshmen who are taking Integrated 1, we can see what portion of them are coming from each of our schools, middle schools. And I want to stay just for a moment on the 73%, and then we can, of course, dive into the 3 middle school graphics. Our principals at the high school have been known to say the math rate is our grad rate, and we kind of heard Derek speak to that just a minute ago, too. So if this stands to be true, this one snapshot from Progress Report 2 this year, we could estimate that our freshmen who are going to graduate in 2028 might have a graduation rate of around 73%. And again, that's not including the students who are technically earning a credit if they secure a D in their Integrated 1 course. So I think that that's a pretty good start. Definitely room for growth, but a strong first start for 12 weeks in high school. Moving into the 3 graphics below, I want to just kind of highlight that the delineation is kind of looking like 81% of our students from Alice Ott who are currently taking Integrated 1 are passing, making good progress. 75% from Ron Russell are doing the same, and 59% from Floyd Light are finding success in Integrated 1. To me, this communicates the need for consistent and frequent cross-building collaboration between our teacher teams across all 3 middle schools, and also vertically between our middle school and our high school. It should be noted that the math programs at all 3 middle schools last year were more different. So this cohort of 8th graders who are now our 9th graders, they had more difference in their middle school math programs than there is this year. The administration teams behind me and educator teams have worked over the last year to take some significant steps towards aligning their math courses, making sure that how we offer Math 8 and how we offer Honors Integrated 1 at the middle schools are more aligned. They're not perfect, but we're working on it. I strongly believe that we still have a need for continued alignment work as we move into 25-26 school year. That alignment horizontally, like I mentioned, across our middle schools and vertically is essential. It is what helps us create a cohesive math education program with a shared math vision and all of our teachers and our administrators working towards common goals for our students, so that there is hopefully less disparity happening between what middle school you might go to and the success that you're going to find at our one comprehensive high school. I'm going to move on to the next one, and I'm sure we'll have some questions on this first graphic. Thank you, Sandy. Oh, actually, would you go back to page 1? And I think it's just the lower graphic. Beautiful. That's what I'm looking at. Okay, so we're still staying in the same bucket of data. You can see across the top there, it's still the 73% of our current 9th graders taking Integrated 1 that are passing. This time, though, I've broken down the information by demographics. And I want to kind of, again, take a little bit of a moment to celebrate some points and also point out some areas that we need to inspect and pay special attention to. First, celebrations. Historically, both in and out of David Douglas School District across our state, there is typically an achievement gap between Asian and Black students. So if we pay attention to our Asian and our Black students, the fact that they are both at 82% passing rates is phenomenal. And I think that definitely speaks to a lot of good progress that we're making in our district, both from the educators, both from our curriculum moves, and just from the cohesiveness of our current program at the high school. So hats off to our teachers. Of the 9 groups of students that are shown from Asian down to, from our ELL, all demographics, all the way down to white, 7 of these are within 15 percentage points of each other. So the disparity between our highest and our lowest, 82% to 67%. You'll notice that I did not mention the 2 lower scores. So there's limited difference between a good subset of our demographic groups. Then, of course, that brings us to the 2 demographic groups that I think need further attention. How are we as a district going to support both our middle school and our high school teachers to increase the ELL student success in learning mathematics? That has been a huge ask from our teachers at the high school. I just spent 2 days with Integrated 3 and Integrated 2 back to back, and they're asking for support with supporting their students who come to us with different native languages, trying to learn math and English. And so I wonder perhaps if we can look into bringing back some of the concentrated efforts that we've had in the past, such as constructing meaning. We've done a huge partnership in the past with our multilingual programs department, and that kind of fell by the wayside, I think, in the COVID bubble, and I think it's a dire need. Similarly, what strategies are we employing at the high school to increase the Pacific Islanders' student success? Currently, 46% of them are earning a C or better. And I know that last year they had a grant coordinator working specifically targeted for our Pacific Islander students, but that grant unfortunately ran out. And so I don't know what moves they might be making this year towards ensuring that that community of students and families are finding ways to succeed and thrive. So maybe they would be willing to speak to a little bit of that. And what kind of needs they are seeing for themselves at the high school. Those are my 2 graphics that like I said, wanted to make sure that we took some time to inspect, and I'm sure you're gonna have some questions that I would love to elaborate on. So I'm gonna pause and listen.
One question, I was just thinking, I know that, I can't remember who was talking about, I'm sorry, I'm old. That grading practices were being reviewed, and I'm wondering in this, are you reviewing consistency of grading practices and homework and all of that, as well as curriculum and also pacing? Because I know like some kids just need more time, more support than is possible in the classroom. So like how are you looking at, those are 2 separate questions, maybe
They are.
3.
I can speak to a little bit more on the curriculum or instruction side of things in terms of pacing. And like I said, I think the big work that we've been doing both at the high school and at the middle school level has been really dedicating time for our teacher teams to work together. The high school had 2 work days for Integrated 3 and Integrated 2, and next week Integrated 1 gets together, and that is all dedicated to, hey, let's dive into what we've instructed upon so far and what are we going to be instructing upon in the next 2 to 3 months, and really kind of taking the time as a collective group to unpack, okay, where do we think there might be some misconceptions, where are we anticipating some student struggle, and how can we plan ahead for those things. And we'll do another one of those work days in the kind of mid to late spring to really reflect back and look forward a little bit in semester 2. The middle school group has a mapping team, so that would be a cohort of a subset of teachers who are coming together to kind of do the same work. There are 32, I think, math teachers across our middle school, so pulling all of them together on a day is not always feasible, but I can usually work with a team of about 9, trying to get 3 from each of our middle schools. And so we've done that again this fall. We have a day earmarked or kind of calendared in February to do another kind of dive into how's it going, what do we need to refresh, what do we need to revive. In terms of the grading practices, I won't be able to speak too much to that, but I do know that myself and Brennan Brockbank, who's our science and health TOSA, we kind of on our own passion project have been talking with middle school teachers about equitable grading practices, and there's a lot of interest between health, science, and math teachers at least who came to our Wednesday morning PL. I think they're hungry for guidance and knowledge and wanting to dive into it, but not knowing exactly what direction they should or are going in. So feeling like there's a little bit more need for guidance, I think, there, at the middle school level at least.
I don't want to blow out your guy. I've been told I have a coach's voice. So, good evening, school board. So, at the high school, we have taken on the huge challenge this year to start looking at our grading practices. So, our building leadership team, we meet twice a month, and we have started to really deep dive into looking at what is best for our students and trying to figure out kind of where are the discrepancies, right? Where can we get better? So we are in the midst of it. We are looking at what surrounding schools are, how, schools that are doing this. We are comparing data to schools very similar to ours, but we don't have an answer at this point in time, but the work is being done. And then I just want to briefly talk about the Pacific Islander stats there. Attendance is a huge piece of this statistic. We do have a 0.5 position this year that is working with that group of students on a very regular basis. We've just been able to marry up an attendance coordinator with that position to really address trying to get these students to school more, because it's hard to teach kids that aren't there, right? So we are well aware of that statistic, and we are working on this. So any questions that I can answer around equitable grading, the research, the work that we are doing, right? We don't have an answer yet, but we are hoping to have something implemented by next school year.
Yeah, I am excited too, because the high school's already started on this work, and this is really hard work to change your grading systems. I mean, this is steeped in years and years of tradition and antiquated just systems that go back years and years and years. So applaud you for doing this work. We do have some money for being an improvement with our state accountability system. And one of the things we're going to do is the high school is going to work. Hopefully, we're waiting for the sole source contract to bring you in January. But working to get coaching for leadership, too, on how do you do that work. And so high school leadership will have coach on fearless grading from creative leadership to support them in leading the work in their building. So we're excited about that too.
I would like to also share that the high school has been meeting regularly with the multilingual department and addressing accessibility for our multilingual learners, and also what that pivot could possibly look like with some co-teaching to support our students.
This is really hopeful work and impressive, and I'm really excited for the direction that this district is taking in its math. Thank you.
And this isn't exactly about math, but I'd love to know the breakdown of the EL students as compared to demographics below, just to see if there's any correlations between.
So you're saying the breakdown of the ELL students based on their race demographics down below?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Because I wouldn't be surprised if you'd see like certain groups that are underperforming also be represented way higher in that EL group.
Yeah, you would assume that the ratios there are probably going to show up in that top group.
And aligned with that, what I'm thinking about too is the amount of community partnerships that we have in place and how much of that is culturally specific. So that would also inform investments and alignments if we had that type of information. But I'm really excited to see this, and really excited to see all the administrators in the room that are all in the same kind of practice, because this 8th grade and cliff to 9th grade math is just, I think it just ties everything together in terms of graduation and 9th grade on track. And I'm really excited to hear this, like how we're going to improve this for our kids, and really helpful about the ELL bit too about, I don't know, I think you both used terms about push in, but basically like the inclusive practices and we have so much of a pull out model with ELL in the high school. So I'm curious about, how do we serve our students best in this kind of capacity. With that.
Yeah, and I think one thing to mention, like both in the middle school and the high school program, if you are a student in our ELD program as a student, you are more than likely going to be taking your math class in a gen ed setting. It's not sheltered, as they say. And so I do know that our middle school and our high school teachers have been really hungry for, okay, serving these students in my class requires that I'm thinking a lot more about the language, the visuals, the structures, the dialogue that's happening between all of my students, almost on an elevated platform compared to in a classroom where you might not have that many ELD students. And so, like I said, I think that our teachers are asking out and reaching out, which has kind of prompted me and our ELD TOSA to really think about, okay, like they're hungry for it, let's serve. So
I have two more quick questions.
Yeah.
For algebra fundamentals, remind me, does that count towards three? Okay, so that's pre.
It is a pre-algebra course, so in high school, in order to have a high school math graduation credit for a class to count towards math graduation, it has to be at the level of Algebra 1 or higher, and our course, Algebra Fundamentals, is a pre-algebra class. We cover content in that class that kind of ranges the middle school scope, really trying to pick out our highest priority prerequisite skills from across the middle school grades and giving students an opportunity to buckle up. Come on, we got to get there. We got to get ready for Integrate 1.
Yeah. I think I probably know the answer to this, but of the kids, of our students who start in fundamentals, the likelihood that they're going to get to graduate has got to be much lower than.
We want ninth graders to be ready for Integrated 1, of course, right? Like that's the ideal. However, we do have some data, and I didn't bring that today with us, from kind of our historical records that do show that if students take algebra fundamentals in ninth grade and pass it, they are more likely to continue to pass the next sequence of math courses. Now, if you don't pass algebra fundamentals, right, then we're on for a rough roller coaster ride. But we do have data that does support that. If you pass algebra fundamentals, you are more likely to pass the next future courses that you're taking in high school.
But it's a coin flip on passing based on your data.
Well, yeah, 57% of our current freshmen are on track to pass with an A, B, or C.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, so that was one. And then do we have any, is there ever any conversation in our district about requiring 4 years of math in high school? Or we make it optional if it's 3 maximum year or minimum years?
As far as I know, maybe someone else can speak to that. It's a state graduation requirement, right. And so we align ourselves with that state graduation requirement. We encourage a 4th year, of course, but I have not heard any conversation of it being.
Yeah, and I'll just say I don't think we've ever had a formal conversation about requiring 4 years. Again, it is a state for 3. The board could have requirements above that. Since I've been in this district, we've never had that conversation, though.
Heather, that would be a push-out model in my family.
I'm just thinking of a think piece somebody sent me recently this week that pointed to how that has a equalizing effect for some of our schools. So just curious conversation from your piece. Thank you.
Do we have any middle school students that take high school math?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
like what
we do. So actually, if you look at, on this page, I think it's technically page 2 in your handout, you can kind of see the students that are currently taking Integrated 2 as freshmen. So you can see we have 129. Keep going down. Actually, keep going. Right there. Beautiful. Oh, no, there we go. So we have 129 current freshmen who came from one of our 3 middle schools, and they took Honors Integrated 1 at one of our middle schools last year. So that means that they all secured an Integrated 1 first-year math high school credit at one of their middle schools. 28 from Alisat, 69 from Floyd Light, and 32 from Ron Russell. There are a few more. They moved out of our district, right? Not every one of our 8th graders comes to our high school, but it is offered at all 3 middle schools.
Thank you. And this is maybe just offline. You can get to me, because when I was in school, I took Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry. I don't know what's covered in integrated math 1 and 2. So I'd love to just get like a quick breakdown. I don't think I ever took a math class that wasn't a specific subject.
There's kind of two camps, you know, algebra, geometry, algebra 2, which is the traditional model. I also went through that type of a math program. And then integrated is really just thinking about mathematics as a study of lots of different concepts. So instead of keeping algebra all in one course, we take algebra, geometry, and statistics, and we weave them, we don't, but the curriculum that we have does, and it weaves it together across the 3-year span rather than keeping everything chunked into separate pieces. And there's goods and bads about both sides of that program. The piece that I like about integrated and that most of our teachers who teach it at the high school could speak to is it gives students opportunities to demonstrate and flexibly think about different math topics within 1 year. So you're not, oh man, I can't stand geometry. I got a whole year of it. So you've kind of got some opportunities to wrap around with different concepts every year.
I'd like to just make a general service announcement, and no sliding your booming voice, Jennifer. But as someone who had to recently miss a meeting because I had COVID, I can tell you 100% if you're not next to the microphone, even if you have a really loud speaking voice, you just wop, 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 is all you hear when you're listening on YouTube or at home. So just want to let everyone know, because it's not apparent when you're here, but when you're at home, it's like very, very apparent, you know.
Good to know.
Yeah, thank you.
Aaron.
I do have a question about, I'm really curious about the algebra, and the reason that it's just kind of tripping me out a bit is because during COVID, I got the pleasure of actually sitting in on my kids' math classes when they're in 3rd, 4th grade, and they were doing what I thought was algebra back then. Like, there's a lot of curriculum in the new math that is specifically tied into algebra. I'm a little shocked to see that it's such a coin flip, because algebra fundamentals are drilled at such a young age. I'm just curious why that doesn't translate over into the high school level, if that's really being drilled in on, and you know, in the kind of math that, you know, like back in the day we just learned, you know, to act like calculators, but now they're actually, you know, tearing apart numbers and doing that stuff at a young age.
So if I think I understand your question correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
We do start algebraic thinking. It's one of the 4 domains in the math standards, organized into chunks. And that algebraic thinking actually starts all the way back in kindergarten with this idea of equivalence, right? This idea that 4 + 2 is equivalent to 6, and this idea that we can balance a math problem. That is the fundamentals of algebraic thinking. And so you're totally right, and you'll see more and more of those kind of algebraic components coming into students' thinking, where they might be having to work backwards and decipher what's a missing value or what is the computation needed. And so that thinking is K-12. You're absolutely right. I would agree with you. I have the same kind of question. If we're working on some of these math standards from K all the way up through 8th grade, how is it that we still have a subset of our students that are finding so much challenge with mathematics in general that they need a fundamentals course in order to launch into their high school career? And I'd love to say that I have their answer, or that someone that I've talked to has the answer. I don't. But I do know that we are working towards, I would say, really looking at how our K-8 progression of math is paying special attention to those areas, those domains, and where we might need to infuse some extra energy in order to support our students as they develop mathematically. We do have a K-8 math curriculum currently that we've never had before in a cohesive chunk. And from the teachers that I've had the pleasure of working with across the spectrum, there are some really strong components within our curricular set that I think that they're really finding are leading to growth and productive math development. So with time, I'd like to say that these numbers are going to continue to increase in a positive manner, but not without the dedication of that teacher collective collaboration. If that goes away, I don't know if the core curriculum that we have will be enough. It has to be both.
Can I ask you just one more quick thing?
Yeah.
And then
I was curious. One of my sons is in tag, and he's in math, 8th grade math or 7th grade math right now at Floyd, and he's been bringing home homework that makes my head spin on my shoulders because it is incredibly hard. I did get to meet with his teacher during just recently, at the end of the quarter, and she's said that that's on purpose. Like, she's really it's an advanced math class, and so they're really sending home some really incredibly difficult homework to challenge the kids to grow in a major way. Is that just going on at Floyd, or do we have more of the advanced math stuff going on in different schools, or is that really specific to?
That's a good question. We do have more advanced math sections at Floyd Light than we do at the other 2 middle schools, and that's part of the alignment work that we've been working on, is to really think about how our 3 middle schools can be more similar than dissimilar. Currently, we do have an advanced 7th grade class, like you said, at Floyd Light, and we do not have an advanced 7th grade class at Ron Russell or at Alisat.
Actually, I could ask Mr. Pisa, are you finding a lot of benefit with having that advanced class in the school, or seeing?
Yeah, there is a lot of benefit. You'll notice.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
I don't want to bend over and show my rear. Thank you for the question. Yeah, we're finding a lot of success. You'll notice that our numbers are a little bit higher with the integrated 2. But I do want to say that all 3 of us middle school administrators here are all former math teachers, all passionate about success of our math. And we're collaborating and excited we've been collaborating as a middle school team, but I'm excited to say that we're collaborating more with the high school, like Rochelle was saying, and very excited about our conversations, like you just asked. We're having these conversations, and we're very passionate about the success of our students, especially in math. And since I have the microphone, a huge shout out to Rochelle. She's been working very, very hard. Yeah. Okay? Yeah, sincerely. So thank you for that question. And are there any more? I'm not anxious, but...
Thank you. I did have a question, because math is so layered. You need to have an understanding of certain concepts to go on to the next, right? I'm wondering, can teachers look at those like fundamentals of math and see like this is what you're lacking, and then how are teachers intervening and supporting students with those? Because if you can't understand a certain concept, then you can't move on, and it makes it so much harder to progress in math.
Yeah, you're spot on in recognizing that there are definitely like prerequisite skills that lead to greater success in future math courses. At our K-8 level, we have a diagnostic that comes with our curriculum, and I would say it does a pretty good job of outlining where there might be some areas across your classroom that could really use some attention, like, oh, okay, this is a prerequisite skill that's foundational to what you're about to learn. How might you infuse? And it gives teachers, I would say, pretty good guidance. When we get up to the high school, we don't have an assessment system like that there. However, I would say that you've got a collection of teachers at the high school who are very fluid with teaching lots of different levels of mathematics, and so there tends to be a pretty good understanding from the teachers of like, okay, if I teach this concept, I have a good understanding of what the foundations are that are needed. And to also, I think, just put in the knowledge base, there's a lot of research coming out around our idea that we've taught math historically as a ladder, right? Like, you gotta get the things before you get to the next level. And there's actually a lot of research that's kind of saying that math is a lot more fluid and dynamic than we are ever taught to believe it to be. And so I'm constantly trying to push on our teachers and my own beliefs in thinking about how, if you don't have that foundational skill, how might you still be able to tackle this problem that feels totally far removed, but kids and humans in general, we're able to see things and make connections when we might have thought, I thought they had to have that foundation, and turns out they were able to get there in a different way. And so that's, I think, another thing that we can continue to grow in, is helping our teachers to see math more as a web of all these interconnected ideas rather than a ladder.
Yeah, I think I had a question kind of tied to that, because when I look at this page, the math 8 grades for people that are currently failing, the concern for me is really seeing these A, B students that are now failing. And one of them, 20, like the highest number is C students that just are going on to fail. It shouldn't, either this is just Q4 numbers and their average was probably not an A, but I'm concerned if they're lot 5 and 9 are going from A's and B's to failing.
I think you point out a good thing to be watching, both from that middle school to high school alignment, and really ensuring that we have robust conversations and expectations, both from the high school side of things, like what are 8th graders coming up with the knowledge and skills with, and what can our middle schools continue to kind of develop and help in that preparation. And then I think the other thing that we kind of mentioned tonight that will factor into that conversation is how might our grading practices, both at the middle school level and our high school level, as those ebb and flow and make shifts, will that make this a little bit less jarring as we go forward? So that would be my hope, is that we continue to work on both sides of that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I just don't want grading practice certain things to have some kids fall through the cracks as a C kid and all of a sudden they're failing the next year because we gave them a grade to just get them to move on.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
Any further questions, comments? Thank you so much.
Thank
This is
you.
awesome.
Invite me back anytime. I'm happy to talk about math.
We will next year. We'll see you. Well, it's going to be 2025, so it will be next year. Because this is our last meeting of the year publicly. We'll the board will have a board retreat, so it's not our very, very last meeting, but in this kind of space it will be. I will then go on to our next agenda item, which is board policy, which is a second read, meaning that this is an action item. So I don't know if Director Ender or Governor Georgeson, do you have anything to brief us on prior to anything?
They're all required, and they're mostly around discipline procedure. And not discipline, but we've been talking about discipline. It's on my mind. It's about complaint procedures regarding these specific areas, and it's all things that are coming down from federal and state that are required to be changed. So there's not really much for us to talk about. I mean, we could talk about what they are, but you could also just read them. They're just things we have to put in and do. So I've read through them. Yeah, unless I missed something. The summary was pretty much all a list of statutes that were changing complaint procedures and how to handle them, and litigation that's coming down the pike that's forcing a lot of these things to happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think in addition, because we have to say this before, right? Yeah, because I think something that we want to know, part of this conversation, is that due to OSBA's addition of new required languages in certain policies, that is policy AC, GBN/JBA, and JBA/GBN. These are policies that are being removed from the agenda and that will be added to the January agenda as a first read with the addition of the new language. So we're correcting the record to say that those are not going to be on today's action item. So we're voting on the remaining policies. So all of the ones except the ones that I had just spoken about.
I'd like to move that we approve the new policies. Save those.
I'll second.
All right, has been moved and seconded. Let's start with Director Barrow. Oh, sorry, discussion. Does anyone have any comments, questions, concerns? None? All right. Let's start with Director Barrow.
Barrow, aye.
Ender, aye.
Saldana Lopez, aye.
Franklin, I.
Gamir Jerson, aye.
Stevens, aye.
Awesome. It has been moved and passed. Thank you, everyone. Now passing it on to Pat for our bond update.
Good evening. So our summer projects, we still have some things winding down. For our Alsot Gilbert Heights, and Gilbert Park, we have some stops that are still needing in the vestibule. And there's a couple items, but the list of outstanding corrections is getting much smaller. For, let's see here, the CTE Center, you're going to see that the walls are going up quickly. Everything seems to be going so far well. And a reminder, the move-in was pushed back from fall to about winter. So just due to all the delays with the permitting. So the one project that I do want to spend a little time talking about tonight is our Cherry Park project, which we're aware of some issues with our contractor. As mentioned here, the contractor did not pay subcontractors. And of course, just like most folks, if you don't get paid, you don't want to work. So we're working with our legal counsel as well as the sureties counsel for performance, and we expect that we will have some resolution here in the next week or so. We did have some additional folks walk off the job last week. So we're hoping that we can get that rectified. We do have issues of heat variations that are pretty substantial in the building, making it pretty unpleasant. And so we're trying to get that resolved as quickly as possible. We'll move on to North Palhurst. We've got an electrical upgrade there also during winter break. It's on target. And then there's a few minor corrections in a bathroom. For Deerdorf, we need to fill in those basement holes where the homes were and remove the septic tanks, and we are just working through some bid processing on that. Projects for next summer, Mill Park, we're quickly trying to determine the best and most advantageous way to split that into 2 different summers. There's just way too much work. And trying to make sure that we get all of the requirements for that FEMA grant done. We're working on a hazard mitigation plan as we speak. South Palhurst, we've gotten the estimates for the work. There's a little bit of a discrepancy between the architect's estimates and the contractor's estimates. So they're working through their differences to make sure that they're understanding the plans correctly. And we'll be getting that rectified here in the next few weeks. For Ridge, that one's coming in within budget and everything seems to be going well there. A reminder, South High School renovations come up next summer, but we're also including the stadium and baseball field lighting as well as those bleachers that we had to put off from last summer. West Palhurst, we have those HVAC systems going there and remodeling specialist spaces. We're looking into a couple different options right now that were brought forward during the review. We do have our next bond oversight committee meeting January 13th, and they'll come and present to the board in February. Any questions?
No, I think we had some time to discuss earlier too. But I just wanted to appreciate you and your team for your work on this. This is a lot of stuff to keep track of. And it's really good to know where everything's at, good to know some things are moving, and it's just unfortunate the troubles that we've been having with our contractor. But we've talked about that a little, but I don't know if anyone else has comments, questions. Just appreciation for you, Pat. Thank you. Alrighty. Moving on to reflections on public comment. We did not have any. So I don't know if folks, we can take the time to talk about just in general our presentations. If you had more time to think on anything people have talked about today. And we didn't have public comment, but we did have our unions, DDAA and OSEA. So those are comments that we did have, which I think in general, I always appreciate hearing from y'all, especially Darla earlier talking about budget. I know that that's going to be a really big conversation that we're having tomorrow around how can we be creative, how are we getting in front of budget this year, because we know that it's going to be, some hard discussions, but we want to do what's best for our students, our staff, our community. So I really did appreciate hearing from her and knowing the upcoming contracts and even settling, with DDA, like all those things are coming into effect. But I think all of us in this table are really committed to talking about it, getting in front of it, and really talking it through. So
I wanted to actually publicly appreciate Darla from OSEA because, and I know that the certified union has much more capacity, right? And OSEA is voluntary dues, and so they don't actually have the same capacity to bring the voices of the classified employees forward. And so the time that she spends to bring that voice, it's really fantastic to have someone like Darla and her team represent them. And just because they're not able to fill a huge room, the way that our other union can, doesn't mean that what she's saying isn't equally valid. So I just want us to remember that.
Any further?
Well, you shared with me, so I want to share it and celebrate one of our students today. It was shared with me about and our high schoolers. So we have a student named Araya Abdullah who is a sophomore here at David Douglas High School, and today she swam at nationals in Texas. And so it was really wonderful. She's accomplished this, huge achievement. So she's down in Texas swimming today, and Coach Bo, Jim Bo from the pool, he invited the high schoolers over to watch her swim live. So, on TV. So really great to see the kids cheering her on, and, she can't hear, of course, because she's there. But it was really special, and I'm really appreciative. And as an aside, she's there with her coach, who's also an alumni of David Douglas High School. So it's just really special, a big achievement, and I was happy to share that accomplishment of her. And so hopefully there'll be some I know there's a lot of videos and pictures and stuff like that, so hopefully folks can see that. But you can also look it up because the video was live streamed today, and so you can check her out.
That's awesome to hear. That's incredible. I'm just amazed. David Douglas grads doing awesome things out in the community. Going to nationals, that's a really big deal. That's awesome. I know we're moving on to board liaisons and committee reports. So that's kind of similar kind of segue into that. But I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in.
I have a report. While Wynn and I went to Gilbert Park, they have a 5th grade equity lunch where students come in and talk about concepts around equity, DEI, racism, all kinds of things. And it was just really nice to be there and see kind of in action what some of our educators are doing to address these issues. And it was a lot in 20, 30 minutes. They covered interpersonal racism all the way to structural and institutional and systemic racism and sort of what they are. And there was lots of Halloween candy, and it was really great.
I'd like to. I was able to also go to Cherry Park this week and take part in their equity committee meeting. It was really, really nice. They had a lot of really deep level conversations, and they specifically talked about the board goals to reduce the racial disparities, and they talked about their numbers specifically and strategized about how to meet that metric, which I thought was really cool. So very appreciative to Cherry Park for the invitation. Yeah, and I have had invitations to my other school, but I'm sorry, I just haven't. It's been during my work day, so I haven't been able to make it yet. But thank you. Yeah.
I was able to make it to the Native American Heritage Celebration at David Douglas. This month has been crazy, so I don't even remember if it was last week or the week before. I know I was there. I've been attending a lot of the I just love so much that our district has so many of these celebrations that I've been trying to make a point to attend as many as I can. It's so great to see all the different facets of our community be celebrated that way. And I think they thought they were feeding like the whole high school. There was so much food, but it was great. So.
I could say that I was able to make it. It was phenomenal. I had a great time. I ate so much that I gave myself a tummy ache, and I took food home. So my kids got some fry bread when I got home, and I got to say I got to learn about native drumming from a master teacher that was there and gave a talk to everyone in attendance. It was just beautiful. Really learned some cool things about native traditions. And the recognition of folks at the end, too, that have really been providing a lot to the local Native community. And David Douglas was really fabulous, too. I also wanted to give a shout-out to the Bazaar. It was great. And to the David Douglas High School PTO for putting that together. I know it's a ton of work, and there's a couple people that really put their back into it and made that happen. And I got to buy a couple trinkets from some local district staff too that had a booth there, so that was also a really fun event.
Gosh, I knew I missed out on the event. I just it sucks because I haven't been able to make any of the cultural events, but missing fry bread, that hurts me because it's so good, but I'm glad that folks got to go and enjoy. I don't know if there's any more. Thank you, everyone. And then lastly, financial report. Pat.
Sure. We'll be fairly brief. And so last month we talked about the economic forecast that keeps growing. And no real surprise, even though there was some rumblings that it would go down, just surprise it stayed and continued to grow. Interestingly enough, there's a new state economist, so we'll see how well he's able to wrangle the formula and get those projections a little closer. So I think there's a lot of concern about the fact that there's been 2 record kickers and the fact that maybe there's been some odd circumstances since COVID with as much money flowed out to state and local governments from the federal government that maybe it caused a little complication in trying to do those projections. So governor's budget was released, and so we're excited to see that it's about $1 billion up, which is what we were estimating. District will focus mostly on the general fund here, and so we have a 12.5 ending projection. I do want to let you know that there was an error in the support services category. Too many zeros, sticky fingers. And so that is up from the last month. It looks more in line with a previous projection that I gave you. About 18 million is what our deficit will be. So We anticipate that will increase, that our ending fund projection will increase as we look at what we are freezing and what spending will decrease during the year. Some caveats to that: we're still waiting for our first period ADMW collection to close, and then we are still working on our projection for next year. That's kind of waiting for that collection closing. And what's interesting is ODE had an opening to make corrections to your existing state school fund calculator. That's normal. And the past few years, there's always been an updated calculation after that. And this year, they said there weren't enough changes. So it sounds like maybe things are starting to stabilize statewide. They're not seeing as big of a change, while a district or two may have some significant things. It's not impactful statewide, so they're not making changes to the calculator. So we anticipate an update probably in January, early February, but again, the first Monday in March is when that 25-26 projection is due from them. And then the grants fund, just a reminder that that's kind of trending a little bit higher than the previous projection, not much as far as ending fund balance, but we still are waiting to hear on that early intervention, early childhood special education contract. The state gave us a definite date of around December 15th. So we aren't sure if that's tomorrow or next week, but we're hoping to know soon. We do have some pretty significant budgetary impacts if that is given to someone else, to another entity. So, any questions?
I have a question. I don't know if you can answer it. It might be Ken or you. When we first brought up the governor's budget a while back, we mentioned that the increases were just going to cover the PERS stuff. But in the media, I've read now that there's increases above and maybe beyond. But I've also read conflicting things in the media, so I was wondering if you knew a little bit more.
Yeah, so it's a little bit dependent on the district, right? So that's a generalization when you say that the 11.36 projected budget or government recommended budget is higher, $1 billion. It's 11.4% increase, which is amazing. We're happy. We're thankful to the governor that she kind of stood behind, hey, we're going to really take a look at current service level and get current service level right, which they've done. The problem with current service level is it has projections that are, I would call a floor, right? Not a ceiling. And the reality is we've been disinvesting in schools for a number of years. So even with that current service level increase, we're still in a position, and I'm editorializing and backing into your question here, but I didn't get my superintendent's report, so I'm sharing a little bit here on top of this. The reality is that number is still a floor. Now, with that said, depending on the district and where you're at, because there are some districts with side accounts and others that the PERS increase doesn't hit them and doesn't hurt them, right? But there's others that it hits them directly, like us and many of our neighboring districts. So the reality is that amount at just the base is what she originally increased was ate up, for lack of a better term, or spent with PERS. She did intentionally bolster that or bring back up to kind of make it even. It doesn't make every district even. There's some districts it's a 16% increase on top of. So it just depends where you're at and how it plays out. But in theory, the dollars and cents she did, the governor, intentionally added more to kind of balance that base. But for us specifically, that's still a floor. We're lobbying and advocating very hard to communicate that we need more. We need to talk about. First, we have to secure that number from the governor. You know, it's the governor's recommended budget. It could go down. It's not secured. So the reality is we have to secure that. And then how do we secure on top of that? What does that look like? And if you don't mind, because we're talking about a budget and just expanding a little bit on this, the reality is what I just said is this should be the floor. And the part of the question is what's in the budget, which is great, and we've all reviewed that, and I'm not going to get in detail, but part of it is also what's not in the budget. And as we, as an advocacy group, and kind of lobbied through COSA, and I know OSBA was involved as well, was an increase to SPED funding and looking at the cap for special education at 11% and a recommendation around 15%. That didn't make it into the governor's recommended budget. The idea about high-cost disability and fully funding high-cost disability across the entire state, that was an ask, did not make it into the budget. Our regional inclusive services, also known as RIS, an increase there. None of that made it into the governor's budget. We've addressed that, we being COSA, they've acknowledged that. They have not, quote unquote, closed the door. They said this is when the advocacy starts, right? There's room to talk about these things. But the reality, those are still things that we're very interested in seeing increases. Going from 11% cap to 15%, there's a lot of people that communicated that big of an increase probably doesn't happen, but even if we went from 11 to 13 to start getting back to where we're closer to the state average, which when it was originally developed, the 11%, that was the state average. The state average now is somewhere around between 15 and 15.5%. So that's why we asked for and lobbied for the 15% to meet the state average. So that's kind of where we're at. I believe we're just above 15% in our district, if you were to look at it. So again, the reality is very thankful, grateful that the current service level went up, but there are things not in it that we're looking at and want to make sure we hit. Now, in our district specifically, the PERS cost does hit us. It's a significant, just the cost in general, and then the increase. So that's real. We know we have enrollment. We know we have new costs, right, that come at us. And another big piece that we're going to be advocating for in this process is no more unfunded mandates, right? If there's a mandate or something that comes from the legislature, we understand there's new laws. We understand we have to change and keep up, but we have to be funded. It can't just be dropped within a budget that we don't have enough now. So that's a big piece you're going to hear from us as well. So focus around that. There's also focus on K-12 facilities, student mental health, early lit, summer expanded learning, which just so Stephanie, I want you to know that I've been public, that I believe that we should fund our school year first at the level that we need and then talk about summer. That's not where it's landed. That's not where it's at. So we know we have summer and we will leverage those funds and use them. I'd personally, and as superintendent, would rather see that. Also talking about attendance and workforce diversity are all things we're going to continue to talk about. So a lot of work around advocacy through the superintendent's group, through DDEA, and I'm sure OSEA, and I'm sure OSBA as well. And I hope we all leverage together to have conversations at the Capitol and make sure that they hear our voice, because the reality is we know we are looking at I communicated a $21.5 million deficit. Right now, it's looking more like 18. We're going the right way. Remember when I communicated out, that's a snapshot now, and it will get better. We'll keep sharpening our pencils, but there's still a deficit. The last couple things, just the reality related to this somewhat, is just post-election concerns I wanted to share in my superintendent's report. We talked about it a little bit tonight, is the idea of this quote-unquote mass deportation and immigration, and how do we protect our students and family is something that we want to be in front of, everyone at this table, I believe everyone in the audience. We also, a lot around rollbacks to title regulations and funding. So specifically, they're talking about rollbacks to Title IX, what that means to us, what that looks like, and then specifically budget. They're basically saying bank on a 25% reduction to Title I funding, and we fund a lot out of Title I, so a 25% reduction will hit us. And then on top of that, they're looking at like Title II and III possibly just being eliminated, just gone. Not huge budgets, but still be a budget. Everything we're investing in students. And then finally, they're looking at and telling us to be prepared for Medicaid cuts as well. So all of those pieces, just I wanted to kind of you to all know, and I think you know that through your OSBA work, but as a district, we have our eyes on all that as well. And you kind of asked me to do a little bit of a superintendent report, so I'm taking a little point of privilege here. So the last thing I just want to say is kind of, we don't have a lot left in the audience here, but for whoever is streaming and just out there, just happy holidays. This is the last board meeting, public business meeting. So to all of our staff, our families, our community, we are coming into a week left of school. I know we'll finish strong in that week, but I truly hope that all of our staff can let go, can have time with their families, enjoy the things that they enjoy, make memories. And to everyone at this table, the same thing as we have a couple more meetings coming up, but the reality for our community, just thank all of our staff for their work. We had administrators here earlier tonight. They are, I believe, some of the best in the state, period. I believe our teachers are classified. They are, I honestly believe everyone that gets a paycheck, they see David Douglas more of a community than just a job and getting a check, right? It's a community that we're serving and giving back to, and I feel that from our employees every day, and I'm so proud of that and so thankful to work in a district where a board leads in that manner. And the last thing I want to say, I don't say it enough, but the cabinet members sitting around this table, this I do know 100%, best in the state. And I'm not just saying that. I guarantee every single one of these people get recruited weekly, and I fight that off. So the reality, just thank them for their work, say happy holidays, and I'm going to give them a directive that they do turn off the computer. They spend time and break, downtime. So with all that said, I just wanted to say, yeah, like Brooke would ever turn off her email. So, but truly, to our staff, thank you for all you do to show up every day for our students and our families in our community. It's felt every day. We saw reports tonight. There's areas we have to get better, but we're all leaning in. We know we will get better. We also saw a lot of areas that we're seeing that growth. We're seeing that lift, and we'll continue that. So that's all. Thank you.
You, Ken. Happy holidays, y'all. I'm so glad. Oh, you have one more thing?
You're done?
Oh, okay. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, there was the second report, yeah. No, but happy holidays. I wanted just to offer any space for anyone who hasn't maybe had the chance to talk this meeting, but I just want to say, echo Ken's statement and just show appreciation, and hopefully people have a good time. Enjoy your vacation. Don't, reply to our emails, please. Just take a break. I'm looking at you, Lori. Yeah. If not, then that concludes our meeting. Thank you.